A German Shepherd puppy was swept away by a raging flood, and what the mother did next shocked everyone. When the storm hit, her world collapsed in seconds. One moment, her son's laughter filled the yard. The next, the puppy was gone, snatched by a torrent no one could fight. But this mother didn't wait for help. She dove straight into danger, risking everything while everyone else stood frozen. Then came the twist no one saw coming. The flood wasn't just nature's fury, someone caused it. As she fights to bring her son's puppy home, she uncovers something far bigger and far darker than a rescue. Every step closer to the truth puts her deeper in harm's way. In a town full of secrets and powerful men hiding behind polite smiles, how far will one mother go when love and justice demand the same impossible choice? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more thunder cracked across the Colorado sky like a giant whip, making 10-year-old Calder Whitlow jump as he pressed his face against the living room window. Outside, fat raindrops pelted the glass, turning the world into a watery blur. His German Shepherd puppy, Scout, whined softly beside him, pawing at the door. "Just a little rain, buddy," Calder whispered, running his fingers through Scout's black and tan fur. The puppy had been his constant companion since Dad died, chasing away the quiet moments that hurt the most. In the kitchen, Brenna Whitlow was sorting through old maps from her days as county cartographer, trying to keep her mind off the bills piling up since the budget cuts had left her jobless. The sound of rushing water pulled her attention to the window. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. Fincher Creek, usually a lazy stream that meandered past their backyard, had transformed into an angry brown monster. Its banks were already overflowing, water climbing higher by the second. "Calder, get away from the—" Before she could finish, Scout bolted through the screen door that hadn't quite latched, the force of his exit leaving it banging against the house. The puppy charged toward the creek, barking at the churning water as if it were an intruder to be challenged. "Scout, no!" Calder screamed, his voice cracking with panic. He lunged for the door, but Brenna caught him around the waist. "Stay here!" she ordered, her maternal instinct kicking in even as her heart raced. Without stopping to grab shoes, Brenna burst out into the downpour. The rain stung her face as she ran, her feet slipping in the mud. "Scout, come back!" The puppy stood at the creek's edge, still barking, his paws dancing nervously on the crumbling bank. Brenna was only 20 feet away when it happened. The ground beneath Scout's paws simply vanished, swallowed by the surging water. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, swept away in a tangle of debris and muddy foam. "No." The faux scream tore from her throat as she ran alongside the creek, trying to keep Scout's head in sight as he struggled against the current. Her feet were bleeding from the rocks, but she barely felt it. The puppy's terrified yelps drove her forward, even as the rain nearly blinded her. She could hear Calder behind her, his sobs carrying over the roar of the water. "Mom! Mom, please get him!" The creek curved sharply ahead, channeling into a large culvert that ran under Main Street. If Scout went into that dark tunnel— Brenna pushed herself harder, her lungs burning. She could see Sheriff Lyle Bracken's patrol car parked near the culvert entrance, its lights flashing red and blue through the gray curtain of rain. "Stop right there, Brenna!" Bracken's authoritative voice boomed as she approached. He stood with his arms spread, blocking access to the culvert grate. "This area's restricted. Water's rising too fast. It's not safe." "My son's puppy just went in!" Brenna tried to dodge around him, but the sheriff caught her arm. "Let me go, Lyle. I can see him. He's right there." Through the rain, she could make out Scout's dark form being tossed in the current, heading straight for the grate. The puppy's paws scrabbled uselessly against the water, as he was swept closer and closer to the metal bars. "I mean it, Brenna. I can't let you near that culvert. We've got emergency crews on the way." Bracken's grip tightened. The whole system could go any minute. Behind them, Calder's screams grew more desperate. "Scout! Please, somebody help him!" Brenna wrenched her arm free, her voice shaking with fury and fear. "That dog is all my boy has left since his father died. I'm not standing here watching him lose Scout, too." The sheriff's face hardened. "Don't make me arrest you, Brenna. This whole area is under emergency protocols." She stared at him in disbelief, rain streaming down her face. The creek was devouring everything in its path, fences splintering, mailboxes toppling, chunks of asphalt crumbling from the road's edge. And somewhere in that chaos was Scout, fighting for his life. The helplessness in Calder's voice cut through her like a knife. "Mom, please, please save him!" In that moment, something crystallized in Brenna's heart, a fierce, unshakable resolve. She'd been trained in search and rescue alongside her late husband. She knew the risks, but she also knew that sometimes you had to act when others wouldn't. The authorities could declare all the restrictions they wanted, but she wasn't going to stand by and watch her son's heart break all over again. "I'm finding that puppy," she declared, her quiet words carrying more weight than Bracken's shouts. "You can help me or get out of my way, but you're not stopping me." The sheriff's radio crackled with reports of flooding across town, but Brenna barely heard them. Her mind was already racing, calculating angles and currents, mapping possible routes along the creek. She'd lost her job, lost her husband, but she wasn't losing Scout. Not today, not when she could do something about it. The rain continued to pour, but Brenna stood straight-backed and certain, even as mud squelched between her bare toes. She was going to find Scout, not just for Calder, but because sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. The creek might have turned into a monster, but Brenna Whitlow was about to prove more formidable than any force of nature. "Mom!" Calder's voice carried over the storm, thick with tears and trust. That trust was all she needed. Despite Bracken's protests, despite the danger, despite everything sensible and safe, Brenna knew exactly what she had to do. Scout was family, and family didn't get left behind, not while she still had breath in her body and strength in her legs to keep searching. The morning sun crept over the Colorado mountains, revealing the aftermath of nature's fury. What remained of Fincher Creek slunk along its banks like a guilty dog, nothing like the roaring monster of the night before. Brenna Whitlow stood at her muddy front window, her body aching from hours of searching, but her mind refused to let her rest. Her clothes were still damp, despite changing them twice. Purple bruises bloomed across her arms and legs, testament to her desperate attempts to follow Scout downstream. She touched a particularly tender spot on her ribs, remembering how the current had slammed her against a half-submerged tree. "You need to sit down before you fall down," Hetty Navarro's firm voice came from behind her. The paramedic had stayed through the night after pulling Brenna from the creek's deadly grip. "Those bruises aren't getting any prettier." Brenna shook her head, wincing at the movement. "I can't. Not while Scout's still out there somewhere." She watched a group of volunteers wade through the muck down the street, carrying shovels and wearing bright yellow safety vests. "Calder finally fell asleep an hour ago. I don't want him to wake up and find I've just been sitting here doing nothing." Hetty moved to stand beside her, dark curls framing her concerned face. "You nearly drowned last night. That's not nothing." She crossed her arms, her paramedic's uniform still bearing brown stains from the rescue. "If I hadn't been driving by when you went under." "I know." Brenna's voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you. Again." The memory was still vivid, the shocking cold of the water, the panic as her foot caught between rocks, Hetty's strong hands grabbing her collar and hauling her to safety. Through the window, They watched Sheriff Bracken's patrol car cruise slowly past, its tires throwing up arcs of mud. He didn't even glance their way. "Some help he's been," Hetty muttered. "All that talk about safety protocols while actually doing nothing?" Brenna's jaw tightened. "I need to check the culvert again. In daylight, I might see something we missed." "Brenna." Hetty's tone held warning. "Just to look." "Promise I won't go near the water." She was already reaching for her boots by the door. They were still soaked, but she pulled them on anyway. "You don't have to come." "Like hell I don't." Hetty grabbed her jacket. "Someone's got to keep you from doing something stupid. Again." They picked their way down the street, stepping carefully around debris. Tree branches, pieces of fencing, and someone's plastic garden chairs littered the ground. The air smelled of wet earth and sewage. As they approached the culvert, Brenna's trained eye took in details she'd missed in the chaos of the night before. The water level had dropped significantly, revealing damage to the concrete walls. But something else caught her attention, a glint of metal upstream. "Hold on," she murmured, changing direction. Her cartographer's instincts kicked in, mentally mapping the creek's course. "The retention gate shouldn't be visible from here." "The what now?" Hetty followed, picking her way around a fallen tree. "The flood control gate. It's supposed to protect the town during heavy rains." Brenna's pace quickened despite her protesting muscles. "I helped survey this area last year before the budget cuts. That gate should be closed and locked, especially during storm season." They rounded a bend in the creek, and Brenna stopped dead. The massive metal gate stood wide open, its control mechanism clearly visible in the morning light. "That's not right," she breathed. "That's not right at all." Hetty frowned. "Could it have broken during the storm?" "No." Brenna moved closer, examining the mechanism. "Look, no damage to the locks or controls. Someone opened this manually, recently." Her mind raced through the implications. "This gate being open, it's why the creek hit us so hard. All that water from the upper watershed came straight through instead of being regulated." "Are you saying someone did this on purpose?" Hetty's voice was incredulous. Before Brenna could answer, gravel crunched behind them. Sheriff Bracken approached, his boots leaving deep impressions in the mud. "This area's still restricted," he called out, one hand resting on his belt. "You two need to clear out." Brenna turned to face him. "The retention gate was opened, Sheriff. This wasn't just a natural flood." "Ms. Whitlow." His tone was patronizing. "We've got county engineers coming to assess all the infrastructure damage. Leave it to the professionals." "I am a professional," she shot back. "I surveyed this entire system. That gate requires a key and maintenance codes to operate. Someone had to physically come out here and open it." The sheriff's face hardened. "What you are is a grieving woman who lost her dog and can't let it go. Don't make me tell you again to leave." "Her son's dog," Hetty corrected sharply. "And she's right about the gate. You can see it plain as day." "What I see," Bracken said, "is two civilians interfering with an active emergency zone. Now move along, both of you, before I have to make it official." Brenna stood her ground, even as her bruised body screamed for rest. "Someone needs to look into this. That gate being open turned a bad storm into a disaster. People could have died." "I almost did," she added quietly. The sheriff stepped closer, his voice low. "Let me be clear. This was an act of nature, nothing more. The last thing this town needs is wild theories stirring up trouble. Go home, Mrs. Whitlow. Take care of your boy. Leave the rest to us." But Brenna had spent too many years mapping the land not to recognize when something was off. The open gate, the sheriff's dismissal, the too quick categorization of natural disaster, none of it added up. As Bracken walked away, Hetty touched Brenna's arm. "Come on, you need rest, and I need coffee." Brenna allowed herself to be led away, but her mind was already working, plotting points on an invisible map. The gate wasn't just about Scout anymore. Something was wrong in their little town, and she had stumbled onto it, quite literally, while searching for her son's dog. She looked back at the open gate, its metal gleaming in the morning sun. Someone had made a choice that nearly destroyed their community. Someone had turned that creek into a weapon. And whether the sheriff wanted to investigate or not, Brenna wasn't going to stop until she uncovered the truth. The muddy water continued to recede, revealing more damage with each passing hour. But it was also revealing something else. The first pieces of a puzzle Brenna hadn't known existed when she ran out into the storm the night before. Back at home, Brenna's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, pulling up the tracking app for Scout's GPS collar. Her heart leaped when a blinking dot appeared on the screen. "Mom, is that Scout?" Calder pressed against her shoulder, his voice trembling with hope. "The signal's active," Brenna confirmed, zooming in on the map. "He's moving, following the creek downstream." She frowned. But the movement is too steady, too mechanical. Through the window, the morning sun highlighted the mud-caked devastation of their yard. Brenna grabbed her keys and phone. "Come on, honey, we're going to find out what's happening." They followed the GPS signal in Brenna's old Subaru, winding along creek access roads until they came upon a line of county vehicles. Heavy equipment churned through debris, while workers in yellow vests cleared fallen trees and wreckage. "Danner Holdings," Brenna read from the equipment logos, her stomach tightening. The development company had been pushing to build luxury condos along the creek for months. A sleek, black SUV pulled up, and out stepped Royce Danner himself, looking fresh and polished despite the muddy chaos around him. The county water director, Vernon Hale, scrambled out of the passenger side, tugging at his collar. Brenna approached them, Calder close behind. "Excuse me, Mr. Danner. My son's puppy was swept away in the flood. Last night. His GPS collar is showing up in this area." Royce turned, his smile practiced and pristine. "Ah, Mrs. Whitlow, isn't it? Terrible business, this flood. Act of God, I'm afraid." "The retention gate was open," Brenna said flatly. "That's not an act of God." Vernon Hale's face reddened. "Now see here, these are county operations. We can't have civilians interfering with the cleanup." "I'm tracking a GPS signal," Brenna insisted, holding up her phone. "The collar's moving with your sweep crew." "My dear woman," Royce's tone dripped with condescension. "You're clearly distraught. Perhaps you should take your boy home and let the professionals handle this." Calder stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Scout's just a puppy. He'll be scared. We just want to find him." Something flickered in Royce's expression. Annoyance, concern, before his smooth mask returned. "I understand you're upset, but you're being hysterical. This was a natural disaster. These things happen." "Hysterical?" Brenna's voice cut through the air like steel. "My son's puppy is missing, possibly injured, and I have proof he's somewhere in your cleanup zone. There's nothing hysterical about wanting to search this area." "Mrs. Whitlow," Vernon interrupted, sweat beading on his forehead, "the county has procedures." "The county also has regulations about flood control gates," Brenna shot back. "Why was it open during a storm?" Royce's smile tightened. "I'm sure the investigation will address all technical concerns. Now, if you'll excuse us." "Investigation?" Brenna laughed without humor. "Sheriff Bracken seems determined there won't be one, just like you seem determined to call this an act of God." Workers had stopped to watch the confrontation. Royce stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully, Mrs. Whitlow. This community has suffered enough without wild accusations. Go home, comfort your son, leave the recovery efforts to those qualified to handle them." Brenna met his gaze. "I was the county cartographer before budget cuts. I mapped this entire watershed. I am qualified, and something about this flood doesn't add up. Mom, Calder tugged her sleeve, pointing at a truck pulling away. The signal's moving. You can't follow our cruise, Vernon sputtered. It's not safe. Watch me. Brenna took Calder's hand and turned away. Behind them, she heard Royce speaking quietly to Vernon, but she didn't care. The interaction had confirmed what her gut told her at the retention gate. This was no accident. They reached their car, and Brenna helped Calder buckle in. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. The patronizing dismissal, the quick deflections, the nervous water director. It all painted a picture she couldn't unsee. Are we really going to follow them? Calder asked as she started the engine. Yes, honey. Brenna pulled onto the access road, keeping the county trucks in sight. Someone made this happen. Someone opened that gate knowing it would flood the town. And I think they're more worried about covering it up than helping us find Scout. The GPS signal blinked steadily on her phone, moving with the cleanup crew. But Brenna was tracking something else now, too. The thread of truth behind this natural disaster. Royce Danner might have money and influence on his side, but Brenna had the determination of a mother protecting her child's heart. And she wasn't going to stop until she exposed what really happened the night the creek turned savage. Through her rearview mirror, she watched Royce's black SUV grow smaller. His practiced smile and smooth deflections couldn't hide what she'd seen in his eyes. The flash of calculation when Calder cried, the hardness when she mentioned the gate. He might call her hysterical, but Brenna's certainty was cold and clear. Someone had deliberately turned their creek into a weapon, and Royce Danner knew exactly how it had happened. Brenna's fingers trembled as she spread her old county maps across Hetty Navarro's kitchen table. The paramedic had insisted they use her house as a base after pulling Brenna from the flood's edge earlier. Now, surrounded by coffee cups and emergency radio chatter, they poured over the drainage network that threaded beneath their town. Look here. Brenna traced a line with her finger. Scout's GPS signal keeps moving along this route. The sweep crew is following the main channel, but there's something they don't know. Hetty leaned closer, her dark curls falling forward. What are we missing? The junction. A new voice joined them. Rowan Pike stood in the doorway, his leather field jacket dripping from the lingering drizzle. The county engineer clutched a laptop bag and looked like he hadn't slept. Sorry I'm late. Had to wait until Vernon left the office to grab these files. Brenna's heart lifted. She'd called Rowan on a hunch, remembering his quiet integrity from their days working together at the county. You came. Someone needs to stand up to Danner. Rowan set his bag down and pulled out his laptop. What he's doing isn't right. Never has been. Hetty pulled out another chair. You're risking your job being here. Some things matter more than jobs. Rowan's fingers flew across the keyboard. I've got the latest drone footage from the flood assessment, and something else, the maintenance logs for that retention gate. Brenna's breath caught. The ones that mysteriously disappeared from the system this morning? I keep backups. A ghost of a smile crossed Rowan's face. Old habits from dealing with Danner's administrative errors. They gathered around the screen as Rowan overlaid the drone footage onto Brenna's maps. The devastation was stark from above. Brown water still churned through neighborhoods, debris collected in ugly knots around bridges and culverts. There. Brenna pointed to a twist in the creek where two channels merged. That's where the signal keeps circling. The sweep barge can't access it directly because of the concrete barriers, but Scout's collar could be caught there, Hetty finished. The water would have thrown him against that junction point. Rowan nodded slowly. The sweep crew will reach that section by morning. They're dumping everything downstream to clear the channels. If Scout's there, we need to get to him first. Brenna pulled up her phone, checking the GPS signal again. The collar's still active. He could be... She couldn't finish the sentence. Hetty squeezed her shoulder. We'll find him, honey. Whatever it takes. They worked through the night, fueled by coffee and determination. Rowan's maintenance logs revealed systematic negligence. Safety protocols ignored, inspection dates fudged. But it was Brenna's old flood overlay maps that showed the bigger picture. The retention gate should never have been opened during a storm, she explained, spreading out a transparency. These flow patterns prove it. When it's closed, the upstream reservoir acts as a buffer. Open, it creates a funnel effect, channeling everything straight into town. Right where Danner's new development is going up, Rowan added grimly. The same development he assured everyone was flood-proof. Hetty frowned. You think he orchestrated this? But why would he flood his own project? Insurance, Brenna and Rowan said simultaneously. They shared a look of understanding. The construction's been behind schedule, Rowan continued. Over budget, but a natural disaster that takes out the existing structures. Would let him rebuild with insurance money, Brenna finished, and probably squeeze more concessions from the county for flood mitigation. Dawn was breaking when they finalized their plan. Hetty would coordinate with her paramedic contacts to monitor the sweep crew's movements. Rowan would use his access to track the barge's exact position, and Brenna would lead the search at the junction point. We've got maybe 3 hours before they reach that section, Rowan said, checking his phone. The terrain's rough, but I know a maintenance access road that'll get us close. Brenna gathered her gear, boots, rope, flashlight. Her body ached from yesterday's ordeal, but exhaustion was a luxury she couldn't afford. Somewhere out there, Scout was waiting. And maybe, just maybe, he was still alive. Brenna! Hetty caught her arm as they headed for the door. Promise me you'll be careful. That water's still dangerous, and if Danner realizes what we're doing... I promise. Brenna hugged her friend. Thank you, both of you. I couldn't do this alone. You shouldn't have to, Rowan said quietly. His eyes held something more than professional concern. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show us who our real friends are. They loaded their equipment into Rowan's truck, the early morning mist wrapping around them like a protective cloak. Brenna checked Scout's GPS signal one last time. Still there, still pulsing. Still hope. Ready? Rowan asked, starting the engine. Brenna nodded, thinking of Calder's tears, of Scout's trusting eyes, of the truth hiding beneath this manufactured disaster. Ready. Let's bring him home. Hetty's voice crackled over the radio as they pulled away. Sweep crew's starting their morning shift. I'll keep you posted. Good luck. The truck wound through back roads, climbing above the flood zone. Brenna watched the scarred landscape unfold, determination settling in her bones. They had the knowledge, they had the proof, and most importantly, they had each other. Together they would expose Danner's scheme and find Scout, no matter what it took. The afternoon sky darkened as storm clouds rolled back in, casting long shadows across the flood-ravaged landscape. Brenna checked her watch for the 10th time in as many minutes, her heart racing as they approached the spillway bridge. The air felt heavy with the promise of more rain. Barge is moving faster than we thought, Rowan said, his voice tight with urgency. He pulled his truck onto the maintenance access road, tires crunching over scattered debris. They must have gotten an early start. Through the gathering mist, they could hear the deep rumble of the sweep barge's engine. The sound made Brenna's stomach clench. We can't let them reach that junction point first. The maintenance road ended at a steep embankment. Below, muddy water churned against concrete barriers and steel pilings. The spillway bridge loomed ahead, its metal framework disappearing into the fog like some ancient skeleton. There! Hetty's voice crackled over their radio. "They're coming around the bend now." Brenna squinted through the gloom. The sweep barge emerged from the mist like a monster, its mechanical arms scooping debris into its steel belly. Her eyes fixed on the drainage junction just ahead, where Scout's GPS signal still pulsed. The first drops of rain began to fall. "We need to get down there," Brenna said, already moving. She grabbed a length of rope from her pack, securing it to a sturdy guardrail. Rowan caught her arm. "Brenna, wait. That hull is slick as ice. One wrong move." "I can't wait." She met his concerned gaze. "Scout's down there. I can feel it." Thunder rolled overhead as they scrambled down the embankment. The barge's engine grew louder, drowning out the rushing water. Brenna's boots slipped on wet concrete as she positioned herself near the bridge support. 20 seconds, Hetty warned through the radio. "They're almost on you." The barge rounded the final bend, steel hull gleaming dully in the fading light. Brenna took a deep breath, calculating distance and timing. The vessel would pass directly beneath them, close enough to— "Now!" Rowan shouted. Brenna leaped. For one heart-stopping moment, she was airborne. Then her feet hit the barge's deck and slid. The wet steel offered no purchase. She pitched forward, momentum carrying her toward the gap between hull and bridge piling. The churning water below seemed to reach for her. A strong hand seized her jacket, yanking her back. Rowan had jumped after her, his other hand gripping a safety rail. They collapsed together on the deck as the barge continued its relentless progress. "Are you okay?" He had to shout over the engine noise. Brenna nodded, her whole body shaking. "The drainage cage. It should be near the bow." They crouched low, making their way forward. Rain pelted them from above as the barge approached the junction point. Brenna's eyes searched desperately through the gathering darkness. The mechanical arms swung overhead, dropping another load of debris into the hold. Then she heard it. A weak whimper, barely audible above the machinery. "Scout?" Brenna called out, her voice breaking. "Scout, baby, where are you?" Another whine, stronger this time. Brenna scrambled toward the sound, Rowan right behind her. There, wedged in a narrow space between the drainage cage and the hull's side panel, was a sodden bundle of black and tan fur. "Scout!" Brenna reached for him, tears mixing with rain on her face. The puppy's tail thumped weakly against the steel deck. He was shivering violently, but alive. "Easy now," Rowan said, helping her carefully extract Scout from his precarious position. The puppy pressed against Brenna's chest, cold and wet, but wonderfully, miraculously whole. "I've got you," she whispered, holding him close. "I've got you now." Their victory was short-lived. "Brenna Whitlow," a harsh voice cut through the rain. "Step away from that equipment." Sheriff Bracken stood on the spillway bridge, flanked by Vernon Hale and 2 deputies. Their flashlight beams caught Brenna and Rowan in harsh white circles. "This is a restricted area," Vernon called down, his voice shrill with nervous authority. "You're interfering with county flood operations." "The operation you tampered with?" Brenna shot back, still cradling Scout. "When you opened that retention gate during the storm?" Vernon's face went pale. Sheriff Bracken stepped forward, his expression hard. "That's enough, Brenna. You're trespassing on county property during an emergency operation. Deputies, get down there and place her under arrest." "She just saved her son's dog," Rowan protested, moving to stand between Brenna and the approaching officers. "Step aside, Pike," Bracken warned. "Don't make this worse than it already is." The deputies reached them as the barge docked against the loading pier. One took Scout from Brenna's arms, passing him to Rowan, while the other secured her wrists with handcuffs. The cold metal bit into her skin, but Brenna held her head high. "It's okay," she told Rowan, who looked ready to fight. "Take Scout home to Calder. Tell him—" Her voice caught. Tell him Mom kept her promise." They led her up to the bridge, where Vernon Hale refused to meet her eyes. Sheriff Bracken took her arm, steering her toward his waiting patrol car. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "No, Brenna." Bracken's voice was tired. "You made the mistake. Breaking the law isn't the answer, no matter how right you think you are." As they drove away, Brenna caught a final glimpse of Rowan in the rearview mirror. He stood in the rain, holding Scout, watching until the patrol car's tail lights disappeared into the gathering dark. She might be in handcuffs, but her heart felt lighter than it had in days. Scout was safe. And sometimes, she thought, the right kind of trouble was worth every consequence. The fluorescent lights of the sheriff's station buzzed overhead as Brenna sat on the hard wooden bench, still damp from the rain. Her wrists ached where the handcuffs had been, though Deputy Martinez had removed them as soon as they'd arrived. The holding area smelled of industrial cleaner and wet boots. "Can I get you some coffee, Mrs. Whitlow?" Martinez asked quietly when no one else was looking. She had kind eyes that suggested she didn't entirely agree with this situation. Before Brenna could answer, the station's front door swung open. Royce Danner strode in, managing to look impeccable despite the weather in his charcoal suit and leather briefcase. Sheriff Bracken emerged from his office immediately, as if summoned. "Now this is unfortunate," Danner said, his voice carrying just the right note of concerned authority. "Sheriff, surely we can handle this situation with a bit more sensitivity?" Bracken shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Danner, she broke multiple ordinances during an emergency operation. To save a child's pet." Danner's smile was practiced perfection. "Think of the optics, Sheriff. Do we really want the headline tomorrow to be about arresting a grieving widow for rescuing her son's puppy?" Brenna's jaw clenched at his casual mention of her loss, at how he wielded her pain like a convenient tool. But she held her tongue, watching the power dynamics play out in front of her. "I suppose we could issue a warning," Bracken said slowly. "Given the circumstances." "Excellent." Danner turned that calculated smile on Brenna. "We're all neighbors here, aren't we? No need to make this more difficult than it needs to be." Deputy Martinez helped Brenna gather her belongings from the property box. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for Scout's GPS collar, but Danner smoothly intercepted it. "I'll need to hold on to this," he said. "Evidence for the emergency management review. Standard procedure." "That's my property," Brenna protested, but Danner was already slipping the collar into his briefcase. "Which was recovered during a county operation," he countered smoothly. "We'll return it once the investigation is complete. Now, can I offer you a ride home? It's still raining." "I'll walk." Brenna's voice was ice. Danner shrugged, as if her refusal meant nothing to him, but she caught the flash of irritation in his eyes before his mask slipped back into place. The rain had settled into a steady drizzle by the time Brenna started the long walk home. Her clothes were still damp, and exhaustion dragged at every step, but anger kept her moving forward. The way Danner had swooped in, playing the benevolent authority figure while stealing the one piece of evidence that might. A car pulled up beside her, moving slowly. Brenna tensed until she recognized Rowan's old Subaru. "Get in," he said through the open window. "Please, we need to talk." Something in his tone made her comply. The car's heater was running full blast, and Brenna hadn't realized how cold she was until the warm air hit her. "Vernon's pushing through an emergency condemnation order," Rowan said without preamble, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "For the entire floodplain. They're filing it at sunrise." Brenna's heart stuttered. "They can't do that. There are procedures, assessments. Not during a declared disaster. They're using the flood damage as justification for immediate action." His voice was bitter. I saw the paperwork on Vernon's desk when I went back to the office. They're calling it emergency protective measures for public safety. The pieces clicked into horrible focus. The flood wasn't an accident, Brenna whispered. They planned this, created enough damage to justify taking the land. Rowan nodded grimly. Your rescue operation forced their timeline. They're moving fast now, before anyone can challenge the condemnation order. My house, Brenna's mind raced. The home where she'd raised Calder, where every wall held memories of her late husband. All those families along the creek will be forced to relocate for safety reasons. Rowan's knuckles were white on the wheel. And once the land is cleared, Danner's riverfront development project can move forward. Brenna felt sick. That's why he took Scout's collar. The GPS data might show exactly when the retention gate was opened. They pulled up in front of Brenna's house. Lights blazed from inside. Calder was home with Scout and their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who had agreed to stay with him. We have to stop them, Brenna said. How? They have the legal authority, the political connections. Then we'll find proof. Determination steadied her voice. The truth has to matter more than Danner's influence. Will you help me? Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he turned to face her. What you did today, jumping onto that barge, that was either the bravest or craziest thing I've ever seen. Probably both, Brenna admitted. Yeah. A smile tugged at his mouth. That's why I'm in. Whatever you need. The front door burst open, spilling warm light onto the porch. Calder stood there with Scout bouncing excitedly at his feet. Mom! Her son's voice cracked with relief. Brenna squeezed Rowan's hand once in silent thanks, then stepped out into the rain. Scout bounded down the steps to meet her, and she knelt to receive his enthusiastic greeting. Her son's arms wrapped around her, next, holding on tight. You found him, Calder whispered. You really found him. I promised, didn't I? Brenna held him close, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo. Over his shoulder, she could see Rowan watching from the car, concern etched on his face. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. But tonight, she had her son and their dog safe in her arms. Tonight, that had to be enough. She just prayed they would still have a home tomorrow. The porch light caught the rivulets of rain running down her windows, and Brenna thought of that retention gate opening against protocol, of water weaponized against an entire community. Her rescue of Scout had only revealed the edges of something much darker. Now she had to find a way to prove it, before Danner's manufactured disaster could sweep away everything and everyone she loved. The county building's backup generator hummed in the pre-dawn darkness. Brenna's fingers flew across the keyboard while Rowan kept watch at the door. Through her earpiece, Hetty's voice crackled from her position in the parking lot. Security's still focused on the west entrance. You've got maybe 15 minutes before their next round. Brenna nodded, though Hetty couldn't see her. Almost there. She navigated through the county's archival system, grateful for her years of experience with their outdated software. The screen cast a blue glow across her face as she dug deeper into the flood control logs. Found it, she whispered. Retention gate control records for yesterday. Rowan moved closer, peering over her shoulder. Can you access the override history? That's what's strange. Brenna's brow furrowed. There's a gap in the automatic logging, but look. She pointed to a timestamp. Manual override initiated at 7:15 in the morning. The storm didn't hit until 7:45. Someone opened the gate early, Rowan muttered. On purpose. Brenna's hands shook slightly as she began downloading the files. The system records the employee ID of whoever inputs the override. The progress bar crept forward agonizingly slowly. Through her earpiece, Hetty's breathing quickened. Movement at the west door. Hurry. Almost there. Brenna watched the file transfer, willing it to move faster. At 98%, the screen flickered. No, no, no! She rapidly typed commands, but the files were disappearing before her eyes. Someone's deleting them remotely. Print what you have. Rowan grabbed a stack of paper from the printer tray. Brenna managed to capture 3 pages before the screen went completely blank. Her heart pounding, she snatched the warm papers from Rowan's hands and scanned them. We got the override log and timestamp, but not the ID verification. Company's coming, Hetty warned through the earpiece. Time to go. They slipped out through the emergency exit, Rowan carefully ensuring it locked behind them. The pre-dawn air was thick with moisture, promising more rain. Hetty's truck waited in the shadows, engine idling. Did you get it? Hetty asked as they climbed in. Partial proof. Brenna held up the papers. But someone was watching the system. They wiped everything else. We need more, Rowan said. Something they can't delete. Brenna's phone buzzed with a text from Calder. Scout's still limping, taking him to Dr. Danner's clinic. She stared at the message, an idea forming. Maris Danner, Royce's daughter. The vet? Hetty frowned. What about her? She hasn't spoken to her father in years, not since she refused to sell her clinic property to his development company. Brenna leaned forward. And she's treating Scout right now. Hetty nodded slowly. Worth a try. But be careful. She's still his daughter. The veterinary clinic was already open when they arrived, though the waiting room was empty this early. Maris Danner looked up from her desk, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd been there all night. Mrs. Whitlow. She gestured to the chair across from her. Scout's resting comfortably. The cut on his leg needed a few stitches, but he'll heal fine. Thank you. Brenna sat down, studying the younger woman's face. Dr. Danner, I need to ask you something about your father. Maris went very still. I don't have contact with my father. But you might have information that could help stop him from destroying people's homes. Brenna leaned forward. The flood wasn't natural. We found proof the retention gate was opened deliberately before the storm. Something flickered in Maris's eyes. She stood abruptly and walked to the door, checking the hallway before closing it firmly. 2 days ago, she said quietly, I received a text from my father. It was meant for Vernon Hale. She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then handed it to Brenna. The message was clear. Flush Fincher before we file. He sent it to me by mistake, Maris continued. When I asked what he meant, he claimed it was about clearing debris, but I knew... She swallowed hard. I knew he was planning something, I just didn't think... He created the flood to force people out, Brenna finished, so his development project could move forward. Maris nodded, her face tight with pain. I've watched him destroy things my whole life, always claiming it was for the greater good, for progress. She took a deep breath. Take a picture of the text. I'll testify if I have to. As Brenna documented the message, she saw the cost of this betrayal in Maris's rigid posture, in the way her hands trembled slightly. Thank you, she said softly. I know this isn't easy. What he's doing isn't right. Maris's voice was barely above a whisper. Sometimes family isn't about loyalty. Sometimes it's about holding each other accountable. From the treatment area came a familiar bark. Maris managed a small smile. Someone wants to see you. She led them back to where Scout lay on a padded table, his leg bandaged but his tail thumping happily at the sight of them. Calder sat beside him, looking up anxiously as they entered. He's going to be okay, right? He's going to be fine, Maris assured him. Your dog is very brave. Just like his family, Rowan said quietly, meeting Brenna's eyes. They had their proof now. Both the override logs and Royce's damning text. But Brenna knew this was only the beginning. The real fight would be using this evidence before Danner could push through his condemnation order and destroy their community. Looking at Scout's trusting eyes and Calder's worried face, at Maris's quiet courage and her friend's steadfast support, Brenna felt her determination harden into steel. They had uncovered the truth. Now, they had to make it matter. Brenna stared at the evidence spread across her kitchen table in the pre-dawn darkness. The override logs, Royce's damning text, Scout's collar data. None of it would matter in court. Not against Danner's army of lawyers. "We need a different strategy," she said to Rowan and Hetty. "Something they can't bury in legal paperwork." Scout limped over, pressing his warm head against her leg. Brenna scratched behind his ears, remembering how close she'd come to losing him. Then it hit her. "The media." She straightened up. "My old search and rescue team used to do public demonstrations, educational stuff, showing how the dogs work." Hetty leaned forward. "And?" "And I still have contacts at Channel 4 News." Brenna's eyes sparked with purpose. "We organize a dawn demonstration at the spillway. Show how Scout survived, how the water patterns worked. Get the cameras there before Danner knows what's happening." "He'll try to stop us," Rowan warned. "Not if we're already live." Brenna pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Sarah Chen. She's been wanting to break a big story." Within an hour, everything was in motion. Hetty coordinated with other flood victims to create a crowd. Rowan downloaded the collar manufacturer's pressure data, showing exactly when the illegal gate changes had occurred. By 5:30 in the morning, they were at the spillway. The first news van arrived as Scout demonstrated basic rescue patterns, drawing admiring comments from the growing crowd. Sarah Chen's camera crew captured the German Shepherd's determined work despite his bandaged leg. More media vehicles pulled up, lights blazing in the gray dawn. "This is where they found him?" Sarah asked, microphone ready. "Right here." Brenna pointed to the drainage cage. "But that's not the real story. The real story is why the flood happened at all." Right on cue, they heard vehicles approaching fast. Vernon Hale's county truck screeched to a halt, followed by Royce Danner's sleek black SUV. "Mrs. Whitlow," Royce's voice boomed across the concrete. "This is a restricted area. You need to clear these people out immediately." "Actually," Sarah stepped forward, camera rolling, "we're doing a live broadcast about flood survival and recovery. Perhaps you'd like to comment, Mr. Danner?" Royce faltered for just a second, his eyes darting between the cameras and Brenna. "Of course. Always happy to help our community understand natural disasters." "Natural?" Brenna held up her tablet. "I have data from Scout's GPS collar manufacturer showing extreme pressure changes at this exact spot. Changes that could only happen if someone manually opened the retention gate, 30 minutes before the storm hit." Vernon's face went pale. Royce laughed, but it sounded hollow. "That's quite an imagination, Mrs. Whitlow. Obviously the collar was damaged in the flood." "The data was uploaded to the cloud in real time," Rowan spoke up, his quiet voice carrying across the sudden silence. "The timestamps match our override logs perfectly." "Those logs were corrupted," Vernon stammered. "We already explained." "And this text?" Brenna held up her phone, displaying Royce's message. "Flush Fincher before we file. Your own daughter provided it, Mr. Danner." The cameras swung between them like pendulums. Royce's practiced smile cracked slightly. "This is absurd, and potentially libelous. Vernon, call security." "Actually," Rowan said, "I need to trigger a safety inspection first." He reached for the control panel. "Standard protocol when there's evidence of tampering." Royce lunged forward. "Don't you dare!" The alarm shrieked to life. Heavy metal gates slammed down at both ends of the catwalk, trapping them all in place. "What have you done?" Vernon moaned. "Standard safety procedure," Rowan explained to the cameras. "When potential criminal tampering is reported, the system locks down for inspection. No one can leave until authorities complete their investigation." "You can't do this," Royce snarled, but the cameras caught his panic. "Why not?" Brenna asked quietly. "Afraid of what they'll find when they look closely? Afraid of the truth?" The morning sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the scene. Royce and Vernon trapped by their own system, news crews capturing every moment, and Scout sitting alertly beside Brenna, his presence a testament to survival against all odds. Sarah Chen stepped forward again. "Mr. Danner, would you like to revise your statement about this being a natural disaster?" The sudden crack of lightning made everyone on the catwalk jump. Dark clouds had rolled in without warning, bringing sheets of cold rain that drummed against the metal structure. The spillway churned beneath them, brown water roiling and splashing up through the grating. "We need to get these people out of here!" Hetty shouted over the wind, gesturing at the news crews who were hastily covering their equipment. Scout whimpered and pressed against Brenna's legs. She could feel the catwalk vibrating under her feet as the storm intensified. Another flash of lightning illuminated the scene in stark white, followed immediately by booming thunder. "The safety protocols won't disengage until the investigation team arrives," Rowan called out, gripping the railing. "We're stuck here!" Before anyone could respond, a massive wave surged up through the spillway. The wall of water slammed into the catwalk, sending everyone staggering. Camera operators fell to their knees, desperately clutching their gear. Sarah Chen grabbed a support pole, her microphone clattering away into the torrent below. "Hold on!" Brenna screamed as she saw Royce Danner lose his footing. The developer's polished shoes slipped on the wet metal, and he pitched sideways toward the railing. Time seemed to slow as Brenna watched him topple over the edge. His fingers caught the lower bar, but the rain made everything treacherously slick. Royce dangled above the churning water, his perfect suit soaked through, his face twisted in terror. "Help me!" he screamed, legs kicking uselessly in the air. "Please!" Brenna stood frozen for a moment, her body aching from days of stress and exhaustion. This man had deliberately flooded their town. He'd nearly killed Scout, threatened their homes, and tried to destroy their lives for profit. Part of her wanted to watch him fall, to let the water claim him like he'd claimed so much from others. But that wasn't who she was. "Rowan, get my harness from the truck!" Brenna was already moving, pulling her rain-soaked jacket tighter. Her old search and rescue training kicked in as she assessed the situation. Royce's grip was failing. They had maybe 2 minutes. Rowan returned with her climbing harness, and Brenna stepped into it with practiced efficiency. She clipped the safety line to the catwalk's main support, while Hetty helped secure the straps. "Hold this end," she ordered Rowan, handing him the belay line. Then she dropped to her hands and knees and began crawling toward Royce. The metal grating bit into her palms as another wave crashed over them. Scout barked frantically from behind the safety barrier where Hetty held him back. Camera lights cut through the rain, capturing every moment of the rescue attempt. "Give me your hand!" Brenna stretched out toward Royce, who stared up at her with wide eyes. His fingers were slipping, one by one. "I can't," he gasped. "I'll fall." "Trust me," Brenna said firmly, inching closer. "Let go with your right hand and grab mine. Do it now." Their eyes met in the storm. Her determined gaze locked with his desperate one. Then Royce let go with his right hand and lunged upward. Brenna caught his wrist in a vice-like grip, her muscles screaming as his weight threatened to pull them both over. But Rowan held firm on the belay line, and slowly, inch by inch, she dragged Royce back onto the catwalk. They collapsed onto the grating, both gasping for breath. The news cameras crowded in, capturing Royce Danner, the man who had tried to destroy their community, being saved by one of his victims. "Why?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Why did you help me?" Brenna looked at him, rain streaming down her face. "Because it was the right thing to do, something you might want to think about." In the days that followed, the dramatic rescue footage played on news channels across the country. But it was what happened next that truly changed everything. Standing before the cameras, his usual polish stripped away, Royce Danner broke down and confessed everything. "I ordered the floodgate opened," he admitted, his voice shaking. "I thought I could force people out, buy the land cheap. I never meant for anyone to get hurt." His eyes found Brenna in the crowd. "And then the person I tried to destroy saved my life. I don't deserve that kind of mercy." The indictments came swiftly. Royce Danner and Vernon Hale were charged with multiple felonies. Sheriff Bracken, faced with mounting evidence of his complicity, submitted his resignation rather than face an ethics investigation. But Brenna avoided the countless interview requests and media attention. Instead, she focused on helping her neighbors clear debris and rebuild fences. The work felt good, honest, a way to heal both the land and her spirit. "Mom, look," Calder called one afternoon, watching Scout race through training exercises. The German Shepherd puppy, now fully recovered, bounded over obstacles with remarkable skill. "He's going to be the best search dog ever." Brenna smiled, watching her son beam with pride. The fear that had haunted his eyes since losing his father was fading, replaced by something stronger. Their shared ordeal had brought them closer, transforming their grief into purpose. Hetty and Rowan stood nearby, discussing plans for their new volunteer search and rescue team. The idea had come naturally, combining Brenna's mapping skills, Hetty's medical expertise, and Rowan's engineering knowledge to help others in crisis. "We'll start Scout's official training next month," Rowan said, his quiet voice carrying warmth when he looked at Brenna. "Though honestly, he's already showing more promise than some certified dogs I've worked with." "Like Handler, like Pup," Hetty added with a grin. "Both too stubborn to quit." Brenna watched Scout return to Calder's side, tail wagging. The puppy that had started everything now represented their future, one built on helping others and standing up for what was right. She didn't need headlines or accolades. The real victory was in the small moments: Calder's renewed laughter, Scout's eager training, and the knowledge that when faced with the choice between vengeance and mercy, she'd chosen the harder, better path. That evening, as they walked home along the recovering creek bank, Brenna realized she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever: faith. Not just in justice or community, but in herself. She had faced power with dignity, saved lives with courage, and proven that true strength flows from compassion, not control. The water ran clear now, singing its ancient song. And Brenna Whitlow, once broken by loss, walked beside it whole again, stronger at the mended places, ready for whatever came next. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.